I'd like to introduce Bill from the United States who takes LDN for multiple sclerosis. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Really nice to talk to you again. And I'd also like to take this opportunity of saying thank you for being such a great advocate of LDN and for the fundraising that you do. It is appreciated.
Thank you as well. You do a lot more than anybody else that I know
of. Thank you. So, you've got multiple sclerosis. When did you first start to notice symptoms?
Well, I had some small symptoms probably as far back as the late 70s, but the symptoms didn't stay with me long enough to really worry about it. I lead a pretty active life, so I figured it was something that I'd probably overdone or something like that. But finally, in 1998, my whole left side went numb and it wouldn't wake back up. And that's when I really felt like I had a major problem. And that's when I started looking into what might be wrong.
And how old were you then, Bill?
I was 49 years old. And to put it bluntly, when I was diagnosed with MS, it absolutely shocked the stew out of me because I have a sister that also had MS. And I'd always been told it was not hereditary and two people in the same family just don't get it. How wrong that was.
So, how did having MS impact on your life, Bill?
Do what now?
How did it impact on your life, having
Well, as a full-time paid firefighter, it impacted my life immediately in that I could no longer do that. Once I was diagnosed with MS, I had to come off the fire line. So I had to make arrangements to try to do some more training or something in order to stay with the fire service. So I had to go back to school and become certified as a fire marshal.
Right.
And at the same time, try to figure out how to deal with MS. It was very traumatic. Once I was diagnosed, the symptoms started really coming forward right and left, and I progressed very rapidly. I was fortunate that I had very good insurance, and so I was able to do a lot of things that some people might not be able to do. But to make a long story short, I went through every treatment, every approved treatment that you could take for MS, and a number of treatments that weren't approved for MS in trying to treat this stuff. But everything I tried seemed to speed up the progression of the MS rather than slow it down. And so I went from 1998 to 2002, I went from relapsing, remitting MS to secondary progressive MS. And by 2002, I was completely wheelchair bound, on oxygen 24 hours a day, catheterized. I had to wear a bib to eat. And I was given, and by 2005, I was given 14 months to live. And I've been on everything from chemotherapy to all the ABC drugs to plasma exchange. Nothing helped. And it was about that time that I read some stuff about LDN. And I started looking into it, and I found Dr. Gluck. And I called him, and we talked for maybe 4 hours. And, oh, what a special man. And I got all the information I needed and went back to my neurologist, and he would not even consider prescribing it for me. So I went to another neurologist, and she actually wanted me to go back on chemotherapy. And I told her I would, but that I'd already been on it and almost died from it. So I would like to try this LDN before I did that. And she said, well, I've never prescribed it before, and it's not approved. And I thought, here we go. But then she said, but since you've already been on everything, I'm going to prescribe it for you. But you've got to agree that if after 3 or 4 months you haven't seen any positive results, you'll go on back on the chemotherapy because you don't have a lot of time to waste. And I said, I agree 100%. So I started with 1.5 milligrams in July of '05. And in October of '05, I went back to my neurologist, and I walked into her office with no assistance. I had no braces on my legs, and I had not had a problem with my MS in the whole 3 months.
That's amazing.
And it just blew her away. She called all her nurses in. Everybody was chattering. And let me go back a little bit too. Before I started the LDN, I was having an episode with my MS every month and would lose more abilities. Once I started taking the LDN, I went over 5 years without having any episode whatsoever. I've had 3 minor episodes since 2005. Nothing that debilitated me or slowed me down from doing what I want to do. It's just been absolutely incredible. My pharmacy bill went from just under $3,000 a month to less than $50 a month. And the full price for LDN here in my hometown without insurance is $36 a month. And my insurance actually pays for all of it but $6. So the rest of my pharmacy bill is mostly vitamins. I did have some problems with my kidneys and bladder because of the chemotherapy, so I do have to take some medication for that, and I'll have to take that the rest of my life. But that was not for MS, it was for the damage caused by the chemotherapy.
You said that you were catheterized. Were you able to have that removed?
Oh yeah. I don't
really.
Have to
That's fantastic.
I don't have to have anything anymore. I have kept the oxygen apparatus and stuff at home just because I don't want to have to fight to get it back if the time should arise that I needed it again. But I haven't had to use anything since I started taking the LDN. And
Do you have?
Tell you, go ahead.
Sorry. Do you have any MS symptoms at all now?
I do have a few symptoms. I have some tingling. I do have to be careful about overdoing myself. I actually run a community garden here now. I have a 5.5 acre garden, and we grow everything in there, and we give it all away. Well, naturally, a garden is a pretty physical operation.
Yeah.
And
big garden.
I have to be really careful. I have overdone myself a few times, and it's, I do still have MS.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to say LDN is not a cure, but it has allowed me to do so many things that I thought I'd never be able to do again. And I'm kind of like you. I look at every day as a gift and an opportunity to do something for somebody else. And so that's why I run this garden. I do a lot of volunteer work here in my hometown. I'm on a lot of boards and stuff. In fact, I just got back from Florida. I'm on the board of directors for our local housing authority, and I had to go to a 5-day conference down there. Well, with MS, you can imagine the stress and stuff that would put on you if you were really suffering from your MS, and I had no problems while I was there.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
That is just such an incredible, inspirational story for other people to go from somebody who was so very, very sick to being able to lead a normal life. I know you still have boundaries that you have to not cross, but it seems as though you're able to carry on with your life providing you're careful.
Well, I do, and I'll tell you, I'm a lot more open with people now than I guess I could have said 20 years ago. I was kind of a shy person, but if I see any person that I see that's having problems walking or has a problem with anything, I'm the first one to go up and say, look, I'm not trying to be too personal, but let me tell you my story, and I tell them about me, and then I ask them about themselves, and if it's something that is wrong with them that I think LDN will help with, then I jump right into it and tell them. And you know, every now and then it's something that it won't handle, but there's so many things that it's good for that I've been able to at least introduce people to it, and I don't push it on anybody. I just introduce them to it and say, look, here's the information, and give me your email address, and I'll send you websites and stuff, and you can look at it and decide for yourselves. And I do know that my neurologist now prescribes it for over 100 people. The compounding pharmacy here in my town, which is a small town, we have about 12,000 people here, and about 70 people get their prescription filled at our local pharmacy here. And they had actually never heard of Naltrexone before I asked them to fill it. And they actually had to call Skip Lynn's in Florida to find out about it. And so now they have like 60 or more people taking it here.
Good. So what does your neurologist actually say about your health now?
She says it's amazing, and one of the things that I think that is a big plus, I give her name and telephone number to people from all over the world, mainly because if their neurologists have a problem with it or don't know anything about it, they can call her and ask her. And the very first thing she's going to tell any medical person is that LDN will do no harm.
Yes.
And that is such a big deal to me because there's so many misconstruing statements about it. I've had doctors say, well, it's an opiate. You don't need to be taking it. Well, it's not an opiate. It's actually an opiate blocker.
That's right, yes.
But the biggest thing doctors need to know is that it will do no harm. The chemotherapy I took was not approved for MS, but I almost died from it. And they were readily prescribed that. And I thought, well, why won't you prescribe LDN? Because there are no side effects to it, really. I mean, not any major ones. And, you know, the only one I really know of is vivid dreams, and I kind of enjoy vivid dreams.
I didn't have any side effects whatsoever. I didn't know.
I've had absolutely no side effects from LDN. In fact, I was looking forward to the vivid dreams because at the time I started taking it, I was getting less than an hour's sleep per night. And if I was having vivid dreams, that meant I was sleeping. And that was really one of the reasons they said I only had 14 months to live. I had a variety of sleep apnea that was so bad that Mayo Clinic told me that they had only seen 2 other cases like mine, and both those had already died. When I say 1 hour for 24 hours, I mean I never slept for more than 5 minutes at a time. And then I would go 2 and 3 days with no sleep, and my kidneys would shut down. My heart would start acting up. I drooled. I couldn't swallow. There were just so many frightening things, and the breathing got to be a severe problem. And there's nothing more frightening than not being able to breathe. I mean, it is scary. But once I started taking the LDN, for whatever reason, that just kind of went away, and I've really had no problem with the sleep apnea. I've had no problems with the breathing.
How long would you say, Bill, it took before you noticed any improvement?
Well, it was actually 2 months before I actually realized, kind of broad-based improvement. But as I say, I was completely wheelchair-bound when I started taking LDN.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our bathrooms were not handicap accessible, so I would have to go in my chair to the bathroom door, and I had a walker right inside the door with a bench on it, and I would transfer from the chair to the walker and slide over to either the toilet or the tub or the sink. Well, as I got into the taking of the LDN, I started noticing a little bit more strength in my legs and in my hands, and rather than having to sit on the walker, I could shuffle my feet, and then I could take a few steps. And I actually have a bench that straddled the bathtub, and I would sit down on the bench and slide over into the tub. Well, I got to where I didn't have to do that anymore. I could step over. I had to hold on, of course, but I could step over into the tub. And so all of those things were definite improvements. And then I was able to just put up the walker. I could take the chair to the door and do everything I needed to do in the bathroom without the walker.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to where I was doing a little bit of walking in the hallways and stuff, and just a little bit more and a little bit more, and I was real fortunate. We have a pool, and so I could do a lot of stuff in the pool that I couldn't necessarily do outside the pool.
Mm-hmm.
But soon I was walking, and I got my cane back out and got to put the wheelchair up, and then by the time the 3 months had been up, man, I had to put it up, and it's leaning up against the wall.
Amazing. Thank you for, yes, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
I look forward to telling it to anybody that'll listen.
Okay.